Well, good afternoon and welcome to the seminar for teacher education. I'm Carole Redwine. I'm with Teacher Education Support Services, and this is one of our seminars that we try to have every semester. I'm sure that you've gone to several others, and so we're glad that you're here. Today, we're going to be talking about something that is a really good topic to talk about, and that is what are principals wanting when they see you walk in the door looking for a job? And to help answer some of those questions, and I'm sure that this is going to be very interactive, we have with us Mr. Lorenzo Bradshaw. He is principal of Brookwood Elementary School with the Kentwood School District. And I started here when I was 13. So this gentleman had been a student of mine, and now he's a principal. Like I said, I was 13 when I started working here. So I'm not old. He's just, very young. But anyway, happy to see him here. Happy to see a student of mine that has been successful, that has moved up through the ranks of education. He has been a teacher. He is now a principal, and I'm sure that he has some wonderful information to share with you. So get your questions ready. Listen to what he has to say, but be ready to pick his brain, because one day you are going to be perhaps sitting across the table from a principal looking to get that first job. So without further ado, Mr. Bradshaw, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me. Thank you. This is exciting. Oh, man, future teachers. So the world is waiting on you. The world is waiting on you. Young minds are waiting to be crafted. Young minds are ready to be filled through your knowledge and expertise. You could not, and I repeat, you cannot go into a more rewarding field than a teacher education program. Now, this is going to be interactive. We're going to be really informal. We're going to ask those questions that you've always wondered, and you just really want to know. And do it now before you really invest so much money into a teacher's education program and decide that it's not for you. I am going to be very uncensored and give you the truth about education. Education 101, the truth. Let's call this course that, because I'm going to give you the real deal. It's always an honor to talk to future teachers, simply because I was where you're sitting a few years ago, right? Even in this auditorium, right where you're sitting, saying, what is it that I want to do? Because originally, teaching was not even on the radar for me. Occupational therapy was. And until the occupational therapy, I was an undecided major. It was just hearing you say, I know that's not what you are, but I was one of those undecided. What do I want to do? And I wanted to go into therapy, and that didn't quite work out for me. So I said, what else do I want to do? And it was not teaching. To be totally honest, it was not teaching. And while in college, as a liberal arts major, I worked at an after-school program, and I worked with third graders. I said, hey, this is not so bad. I actually enjoy working with students. And it was after that experience that I decided, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to do. So my advice for you, as you're deciding to make up your mind, or if this is something you really want to do, get as much experience now with students in, your Sunday school, after school programs, mentorships. Just get exposed to what it is that teachers are doing, going to volunteer at your middle schools, elementary, high schools, the age level that you feel most comfortable with. And that will give you an authentic feel before you spend tens of thousands of dollars and decide it is not something that you want to do. What are principals looking for when we are sitting across from candidates that are looking for jobs, potential teaching candidates? There's a lot. There is a lot that we look for. Give you an example. I had a kindergarten position available and I had a second grade position available. How many of you are I'm just curious, how many of you are interested in um, elementary, upper L, elementary? How many of you, middle school, high school, elementary? Is this all elementary? You're interested in upper high school, okay. Wow, elementary. Males, just by looking at the room, it gives you some indication of how in demand men are in education. That works to your advantage. That works to your advantage. But more importantly, what we're looking for is candidates who really can first and foremost build positive relationships with students. Research supports and statistics confirm that kids don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Think about the teacher that you just wanted to please. Think about the teacher that you would just work so hard for. And usually it was one of those teachers that you connected with, one of those teachers that you really felt cared about you. Again, it's just really being relational driven. Everything centers around relationships. Who can connect with kids? Who can build positive relationships with not only kids? Because you have to work with your colleagues, other teachers. You have to work with the parents, building positive relationships with parents and community. And so really having the capacity to build positive relationships is the nucleus of the work we do, whether it be elementary, and boy, in secondary, when peer pressure is so great and peers are so important, that piece of building relational capacity can be a challenge, because at elementary, we have generally one class of students that we're working with all day. You're 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32 students. We have that one set of students. Secondary, the challenge becomes every hour for 5 hours a day, you have students that are changing. And so it can be a challenge in secondary, but not impossible. Having the capacity to build relationships is extremely important. What else are we looking for? Instructional leaders. If I can give you any advice, the best advice is I can give you while you're going through your educational matriculation is to learn the craft, learn instruction. Instruction is what we do. It's the teaching component. And learn the best practices. What are the best practices? What are the research-based best practices that yield outcomes, positive outcomes for student success? So throughout your program, you're going to, or if you're in your program, you're going to learn the best practices of teaching reading, the best practices of teaching writing, the best practices of math, science, and social studies. Learn those practices. And not only learn them, but couple them with the opportunity through your practicums and your student teaching experience to try them. Oh, teaching is in art. The art of teaching is that I can give you all assignments to teach from kindergarten to 12th grade, give you one content that I want you to teach, one standard, one objective that I would like you to teach. The art of teaching is that though this is the standard, you get to make the magic come alive in your classroom. And I contend if I gave you a standard, you will all teach the standard, but you'll all teach it differently. Some of you will use music. Some of you will use movement. Others of you will use lecture, and some will use a game. I mean, that's the art of teaching, is that you get, however you deliver it, however you make it work, as long as the outcome is positive for student, it works. It works. So that's the art. That's the part that gets students engaged of how do you make students become engaged? How do you hook them with the learning? That's the art to teaching. But there are also some sciences to teaching, and those sciences are those best practice. What are the best practice strategies that really get students learning? So when you're coming in and you're sitting across from me in an interview, one question I'll ask the question, if a student in my 5th grade classroom isn't reading on a grade level, what supports would you put in place to support that student? And when we talk about supports, the buzzwords, we have buzzwords in education, and many of you have probably heard of RTI, or response to intervention, or MTSS, multi-tier systems of support. How do you help a kid learn to read in 5th grade? Well, I'll go down to kindergarten. What are you going to do to help a kid to read in kindergarten? Or let's go to 12th grade. You have, or secondary. You have a secondary student who's a struggling reader. Though you teach science, what strategies will you put in place to support struggling readers? So you have to know the craft from kindergarten all the way up to seniors in high school, because we do have struggling students as secondary students. So what systems of support do we put in place to support them students? So one question I'll ask is, and I as a principal, they're your standard questions. Your standard questions would be something like this. Tell me a little bit about yourself and what would make you a good fit for the position. Always be prepared to answer that question. It's a free question. And yeah, we care about your life and we care about, your children. Those things are engaging. But interesting enough, in answering a question like that, I want to know everything you know in a snapshot of why you will be a good fit for this position. Is when that question is given to you, and most interviews start with a question framed like that. That's the opportunity. What we're saying is sell yourself. Sell yourself. Tell us about yourself. But I'll go off the cuff, and I'll ask a question like this. Remember I told you relational capacity is important? I'll ask a question like this. It sounds like, take 1 minute and convince me and my committee that you love children. If you love children, you light up and you just begin to rattle off everything you've done. How do you know you love them? And then some people just sit there and stare. Okay, you have 15 more seconds. Can you say something? I mean, it's the job of, no, I'm saying in an interview. In an interview, I'll ask that question. They'll be staring at me, and I'm like, okay, 15 more seconds. Say something. Please say something. But that whole relational capacity piece is important. And then what is now the best practice in interviews is it's not even enough for you to share with the committee how you build positive relationships. It's not enough. It's not enough for you to share best practice strategies. It's not enough, because the next step then is we set up a classroom of students and we ask candidates to come in and teach a lesson. Teach a lesson, a full, all-out lesson from beginning to end. And you'll have a committee of stakeholders, parents, teachers, myself, support staff, just a nice cross section of the staff that watch you teach. And so it's not enough just to know the jargon and know the terms, but it is equally important to be able to put those terms and those practices into authentic practice. And so we ask candidates to teach for us. And so always be prepared as you're doing your practicums, as you're doing your student teaching experience. Please be prepared for that lesson, that one lesson that you just know you just hit it out the ballpark. But what happens, what works for some students may not work for another. So always have a backup plan. Always think through a lesson enough to know, because that's the art of teaching. The art and science of teaching is you can teach it 1 year, and it's the best thing since sliced bread. And you can come right back and teach the same lesson, same content, same standard, and it flops. Embrace it. Use it as a teachable moment and an opportunity. In education, as a teacher, we fail. We flop all the time. But it's an opportunity to be reflective. Write this word down, reflective. And refining. What do I mean by being reflective and refining? Being reflective. My lesson flopped. I'm going to step back and be reflective. What do I mean? Talk to me. Talk. Somebody talk to me, please. The pros and cons in reflecting. What went well? What didn't go so well? And then you said do some revising as to what didn't go well. Absolutely. Anybody else want to add on to that? Be reflective and refining. I'm not going to move on until one more person speaks. One more. Reflective. What does it mean to be reflective? Reflective, refining. Have you ever had an opportunity where you've had to reflect on something? Anybody want to share? Something that didn't go well. Mm-hmm. You're already being reflective. And I'm not going to say negative feedback, because feedback is just that, feedback. And whether a lesson is favorable and kids understand the outcome, and if the lesson is not the outcome that you expect, always as educators be reflective. Because even on a good lesson, how can I make it what? Better. Oh, great teachers are always reflecting and refining. I do not, in a teacher candidate, I don't want a candidate that has all the answers. Because I'll ask a question. Talk to me about a time when you've taught a lesson and it didn't go so well. I'm looking for an authentic experience that you've had the opportunity to be reflective and refine. And I follow up that question with, well, what did you do next? What did you do to change? We're always looking for, because you don't know it all as teachers. You will never know it all, but always capitalize on the opportunity to be reflective and be refining. and based on feedback. And you share that piece around feedback. It's so important what you do with the feedback. The teaching pool is very competitive, extremely competitive. For those two positions, I may have had 200 resumes apiece. 200 resumes apiece. There is no way I have time to look through 200 resumes. But let me tell you what we do, and let me give you some key points. Don't send a 4, 5, 6-page resume. You want to capture your whole educational matriculation and every training and every professional development that you've had in 2 pages at the most. At the most. Your objective. Please refrain from the cookie cutter objective that you can just go out on the internet. My objective is to secure a classroom where I can prepare students to be lifelong learners. Womp, womp, womp. Be creative. Let your objectives speak to your beliefs, but also let it speak to who you are. Really, that snapshot, that objective piece is such an insight onto who candidates really are. Right now, capitalize on every opportunity. If this is the field that you're going to go into, capitalize on every opportunity to work with students. Oh, it speaks volumes when you're working with students at the church. It speaks volume when you're working with students in the community. It speaks volume when you're doing volunteering and working with students at your local elementaries. That speaks volumes. That's experience. And a lot of times, candidates, teacher candidates, where they fall short at is with their experience. You have all of the credit hours. You have the student teaching practical, and the practicums out the way. But the more experience that you can encounter, the better equipped you'll be at working with students. And so those are just a few things that I know that's important in hiring teacher candidates. Now, I'm going to open the floor to you, and I will not stop pushing until I get a minimum of 7 questions. Now, we can go as many questions as you like, but a minimum, you're going to have to talk to me now. It's your turn. And I assure you, I'm going to give you the most honest answer that I know. And if I don't know, I'll leave you my email, and I'll follow up and get back with you. How does that sound? Good. Okay. Question from the audience. This is going to be talk show style. Question. Very good question. Very good question. The question was, what is the best way to get a resume to a potential employer? And the best answer I could give you is 1, if you know someone on the inside, use it to your advantage. Neighbor's a teacher, mom's a teacher, uncle's a teacher, cousin a teacher. If you have that inside influence, now remember, 200 resumes for one job. That's a lot. So you have to find every advantage to kind of weed your resume to the top. 1, influence. That helps when someone can speak to your character. Another one, and this just happened today. timing. A candidate, she just graduated from Calvin College in January. She walked in the office. I just happened to be sitting at the computer and said, I just want to stop by and introduce myself and hand you my resume. We shook hands, and I said, well, just tell me a little bit about it, because I saw special ed on there. Well, and she shared with me her special ed experience, and she said the word, she's worked with students with autism. Well, just so happened, I just opened up a position for students with autism. And so I just, right then and there on the spot, I booked a follow-up interview with her. And I want to know more about her and her experiences, because she has something that I'm looking for. Doesn't hurt to stop in and drop off a resume, but principals are very busy people. Don't take it personal if they cannot meet with you at that time. But it doesn't hurt to just stop in, and that allows the principal to put a face with the resume. And sometimes you won't, 8 times out of 10, you probably won't even see the principal. But guess who really works hard on behalf of the principal? The secretary. That is an extension of the building. So if you come in with a nice smile, pleasant attitude, when she hands me the resume, she's going to say, I really liked her. Or she's going to say, So I'm telling you, it makes a difference. You are on the minute you walk in that door, you're being watched. You're being scrutinized. Your smile, your personality, your eye contact, your handshake. Oh, the secretary reports it back to me. And when she hands it to me, she's going to give me a report. And I trust, principals trust their secretaries. Email gets kind of lost in the shuffle, because right about now, starting in about March, April, when teacher candidates start graduating, the floodgate just comes with, please look at my resume, please look at my resume, please look at my resume. And I just kind of respond, apply at the district, because all resumes go to generally a centralized location. So again, if there were 2 things that I would share with you to answer that question is, 1, if you have an inside track, use it to your advantage. 2, it doesn't hurt to stop by and put a face with the resume. Question number 1 down. Questions from the audience. Very good question. Wow. The question was, 200 resumes, what's the likelihood of hiring a first-year teacher as opposed to a veteran teacher? And that just depends. It's very situational. I'll give you an example in efforts to answer your question. I had a teacher who retired. I had 2 teachers retire in the same grade level. I was very intentional in hiring a veteran teacher. I needed a veteran teacher simply because I needed someone that was going to come in there that had some experience. But the second teacher I hired was a first-year teacher. First-year teachers are amazing. They come in because their mindset is, there's nothing that I won't do. I'll come early. I'll stay late. I'll run track. I'll run basketball. I'll do everything. And the excitement and the joy that young teachers bring to a building, that energy, it sells you. The more energetic, the more that you're willing to do, the more principals are saying yes. And so we don't rule out first-year teachers. As a matter of fact, we look favorably upon new, innovative teachers, particularly if you have the capacity to build positive relationships and you know your craft and you have the energy. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. We don't shy away from first year teachers. But think about it. Most of the resumes in the stack is generally first year, second year teachers. Yeah. So very, very good questions. Don't be deterred because at the end of the day, I'm telling you, of my teachers that I've hired in the past 3 years, and it's been about 6 teachers, 4 out of the 6 have been first year teachers. And 4 out of the 6 are dynamic teachers and again are still in my building making a positive difference in the lives of students, families, and the community. So, oh yeah, oh yeah, we'll hire you. 2, give me another question. Some down here. Sure, very good question. He wants to talk about the money. Show me the money. Well, generally, most districts have steps. You come in on a step. Generally, a first year teacher, there's a first year salary step. Only negotiable when you have something that we really need. So, a first year teacher don't come in asking for step 5 salary. That's a sure way. That's a deal breaker. Resume goes in the trash. As a matter of fact, let me give you this point here. Please write this down. When you come to an interview as a first year teacher that I'm not coming out recruiting, don't even bring up salary. That information is generally found on the website, what the salary steps are. Don't bring up pay. Make it to the second round or even the third round, and generally we'll bring it up to you. We'll bring it up to you. That's just an extra nugget for you when you're going through the interview process. Thank you for the interview. Now, how much does the job pay? Because the focus isn't really on, we're not looking for somebody that's just looking for the money. We're looking for someone who is going to make a difference. And so districts have established a pay scale. Step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5, step 6. And most go have a 10-step program, 10-step pay salary. Others have 13 steps, and it just varies from district to district. Now, you do know going into education, most chances are you won't be wealthy unless you're wealthy already going into education. It's not a wealthy profession, but it is a rewarding profession. I'm sure you've been exposed to the terms intrinsic, extrinsic. Extrinsic is all those outside things that motivate people. It's the money, it's the travel, it's the perks. Those are the extrinsic tokens that jobs offer people, signing bonuses. That's extrinsic. Intrinsic is where we get our greatest rewards. Intrinsic is when the kids you've been working on to learn their letter sounds and letters, and finally the light goes on and you're like, yes, priceless. That's what really motivates educators, because the pay, it's comfortable. Yep, you get some vacation time, but it's the intrinsic that motivates the educator. It truly is. Does that answer your question? But it's a step system, and it ranges from district to district. It's already laid out, spelled out, so there are no questions about the steps. Then we'll go here. Mm-hmm. Wow, I wonder where she worked. Not probably, or some good investments, or something like that. But I tell you, it's you as an educator, you live comfortable. You have comfortable living, but wealth, uh, and maybe she got an inheritance or something. But $9 million. That's $1 million a year. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. I want to know where that district is too. That's $1 million a year. Whoa, whoa. That's a lot of money. I don't know what district that's in, but yeah. But again, it's. But I tell you that the difference of making the feeling you get in making a difference of a life in the lives of young people, it's really priceless. It's really priceless. Or that kid that you just see struggling, that's so motivated, and finally they get it. Oh, you just do your happy dance. It's really really exciting. Yeah, they're different rounds. Usually 200 resumes, one position. So generally, I'll take out the top, and this is really liberal because most of my colleagues will not. But I'll look at the top 40. 40. I'll look at 40 resumes, and I'll set up what's called a screener. And this is what screening. A screening is like speed dating. You literally come in, and I'll ask, and it sounds just like this. Thank you for coming out today. Just want to get to know you. Put a face with a resume. I'm going to ask you 3 questions, and that's going to conclude the process. I'll ask if there's any questions of me, and we'll get back to you to let you know if you went to the next round. That's a screener, real short and sweet. From the screening, I'll probably screen 40 down to 10. With 10, and then I won't, and then it's a process that I have to call all 30 back and say, fortunately, we decided to go in another direction, but we wish you the best of luck in your future endeavors. Now with the 10, we'll have a more thorough interview process. And that interview process consists of me, my secretary, teachers, parapros, and parents. So you'll walk into a room with about 12 people. And we'll take that process and narrow it down to about 3. And from the 3, we'll schedule an hour block with you apiece, and we will have you come teach a lesson, and then we will debrief with you. And we're looking for that reflective and refining piece. And then the committee chooses the candidate. So it's a very again competitive process. However, with some of the nuggets that I've given you today, if you work those to your advantage, you can get through. You can get through. Know the craft. Know how to build relationships, positive relationships with students, families, community. Understand instruction. You'll be fine. Very good question. Very good question. And it varies from district to district. In a former district that I worked in, central office did all the hiring, and I need a 5th grade teacher in my building. You would just show up. You would just show up, but the central office would hire you. In my current district, Kentwood Public Schools, I do the hiring. That means you come and interview. The only way that HR is involved is that I say, what's your name? I want to recommend Tiffany for hire. And then they process the paperwork. but we have the autonomy to do our own hiring in Kenwood Public Schools. So the principal does the hiring. And in most cases, that's the case. You'll work in the district that the principal does the hiring. That's why that piece of stopping by, and if you catch the principal, fine. But impress and do your best dance for the secretary if in the event that you do not see the principal, because she's going to pass on the resume. So that's a very good question. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What's the first thing I would look at? It is the three simple questions, and it is the person that exudes uh, confidence, but not overconfident. The person that's reflective and refining, and within that three questions, I tell you, sell yourself. Just sell yourself and be confident in what you know. Um, Teachers, a lot of time candidates are nervous. Communication 101, stand in the mirror, practice answering questions, be you, stay away from cookie cutters. Stay away from cookie cutter answers. What does that look like? Um, Tell me three adjectives that describe you. And a teacher would say, I'm innovative, I'm a team player, and I am, give me one. I'm sociable. You know what's going to follow that. Give me an adjective. Talk to me about an area where you need the most improvement. Oh, well, I don't know when to stop working. I work so hard, I don't know when to stop working. Okay. Realistically, we all have something we can improve. As a matter of fact, the biggest room in the world is the room for improvement. And when you can honestly say, you know, organization continues to be a challenge for me. However, here are some things that I've done to help myself become more organized. I create lists. I set up folders. It's made me a human. And then for me, it's like, okay, wow, I'm not the most organized person. I can learn some strategies from this person. But be real. Because when you're not, we can see right through it. We can see right through it. And we're not looking for the perfect candidate because there is no perfect candidate. And so when you really allow yourself to come through and shine in the interview, truly, truly, um, that's when um, you capture our attention. Yeah, I did. Urban districts. Very good question. Um, Urban versus suburban versus rural. Different dynamics, but kids are kids, and every kid has the right to a quality education. In the more urban setting, there are some bigger challenges. There are some enormous challenges, but kids are kids, and every kid is deserving of a quality education. in the more urban the district, uh, some of your challenges are going to be huge. What do we expect as administrators in urban, suburban, and even rural? A classroom manager. Someone that is, and it starts, classroom management starts with the nucleus of building positive relationships. But I assure you, there are some challenges that you have in an urban setting that you will not, you have challenges everywhere. Let me make it clear. To your most affluent districts, to your most urban district, you will have challenges. There's no escaping the challenges. The challenges just look a little different. But the expectation is again, building positive relationships to be able to manage and support urban students. If you can make it in an urban district, you can make it anywhere. If you can make it in an urban district, because the challenges are so different. And really, the role of an urban teacher is extremely multifaceted. Because before you can get to the teaching, you have to be the social worker, the surrogate parent, the counselor, and you wear many hats in an urban district for your students. You have students that are in crises. You have students that have been traumatized, and you have to establish the environment, set the climate for that student to be able to learn. And you do that through building the nucleus. It works no matter where you go. If you can build a positive relationship and connect with students, you have captured them. You've captured them. And I assure you, it's a little more challenging. I challenge all of you to do a practicum, student teaching experience in an urban district. And get the exposure, get the experience, because I can contend, if you have worked in an urban district, or Detroit Public Schools, or Grand Rapids Public Schools, Chicago Public Schools, everybody's interested in looking at you. That'll get your foot in the door anywhere, because if you can do it there, you can do it anywhere. And I tell you, I assure you that some of the best training you'll get in becoming an instructional leader is in an urban district, because you have to be cutting edge to teach urban students. You have to know the best practices. You have to know the research-driven strategies to teach in an urban district. The best training, I contend, is in an urban district. Get your feet wet, learn the strategies, and the doors will open wide open for you. You want to learn how to teach a kid how to read? Go to an urban district. They're going to give you the best professional development. You're going to have the best on-the-job training. But the expectation is a little higher. You may make a little less money, but the training ground is priceless. And for some people, it's just for you, and that's where you commit your career. Mm-hmm. Sure. Oh, oh, it's a good experience, and you got the 360. You can just sense what's going on only in an urban setting. Challenging, but I tell you, rewarding, very rewarding. Here, and then we'll go here. Right, and generally, once you build that, find your niche. Who wants to start over? And then there are some things that y- you feel, for those teachers, it's their calling. There's nothing, and I'm talking about tough situations, and there's nothing else that they would rather do. It's their calling. It's where they're connected. And again, it really gives you some insight on, um, or give you that sense of awareness and that sense of uh, best practice in those districts. And some people will not leave. Good question. Oh, your major is uh, uh, what is it that if I had to prioritize, if you had to prioritize what it is that you ultimately want to do, that's what I would major in. I knew I wanted to be an elementary school teacher, so my major was in elementary education. I love ELA, so I received a minor in language arts, and so there are a million combinations of what you want to major, but it's kind of prioritized on what are your interests? What is it that you enjoy? What is it that you like? Where do you see yourself in 10 years? A biology teacher or a math teacher? Or math teacher, major in mathematics and language arts? You know, good question. I'm so happy you brought up that. I'm so happy you brought up. I'm so happy you brought that up. Very good question. Special education. Um, you could major in, well, you're gonna, in order to have a special education major, you have to major in elementary or secondary. You have to have that major. You couple that major, now special education, you're gonna go to school a little bit longer, but it's a lot more rewarding. You're talking about narrowing down the resume pool. Huh, that's one sure way to get yourself out there. Special education. When you major in secondary, because you're going to have to, secondary or elementary, that's going to be your major. You then add on special education endorsements. What does that look like? Oh, I'm an elementary school teacher, but I'm going to go, in addition to getting my elementary school certificate, I'm going to add on an endorsement for emotional impairment and working with students with autism. And so, or then I'm going to add on learning disabilities. And so you just keep building on, adding on those endorsements. You know, as many as, the more endorsements you have, the more marketable you are. ELL endorsements. It's major in education, whether it be elementary or secondary, but then you're just adding on and layering on the endorsements. The hottest endorsement out there now, the hottest, if anybody has any interest in special education, it is now working with students with autism, the ASD spectrum. We are becoming more and more savvy and sophisticated and knowledgeable about autism. ASD is what it's called. Um, Autism spectrum disorder. We're becoming more knowledgeable and we're becoming more intentional in diagnosing kids properly with ASD or autism. And some of you know students with autism. You may have students with autism in your family. It is the hottest endorsement out there, and it's very difficult to find. So that's a current one. That's really hot. We'll go here and here, and then we'll start wrapping it up. Absolutely, an endorsement is nothing more than after you get, and again, you're going to go to school a little longer. However, what it does is it qualifies you to teach a particular section of students with special needs. You would major in elementary education, but you may want to get a ZA endorsement or early childhood endorsement, and so there are endorsements even for kindergarten. Yep, sure. But let me caution you with that. There's one caution. You may, in certain districts where you're hired through more of a central office approach, you may have gone to school for kindergarten, but the chances of you getting a grade that you've gone to school or did your student teaching in, it's very low. I only wanted to be a third grade teacher. You couldn't tell me any. I'm going to, because that's where I did my after school program. I worked with third graders for 5 years. And then I did my student teaching in third grade, and all my practicals in third grade. So I was really equipped for third grade. And they offered me a sixth grade math position. I needed a job. So guess what I did? I took the position. Just before you came in, I was sharing with Mrs. Redwine that my best friend was a kindergarten teacher. And he got kindergarten for 2 years. But as young teachers, generally, we're the ones that get laid off first. And so he was laid off. He got called back. They had already filled his kindergarten position. He went to fourth grade, and he's never gotten that position back. And so my caution is be flexible and have some versatility. Get some practice at the upper L, the lower L. Be flexible and be very flexible even with secondary, because in secondary you're more content driven, whether it be social studies, mathematics, or science. But be flexible enough to teach that whole spectrum from sixth grade to 12th grade. That's what I would caution you even in the secondary. Or even if you the whole lower L is kind of like lower L versus upper L. Third through fifth is upper L. K1 2 pre-K, because I have a young fives program. So you may not get kindergarten, but you may get first grade or a young fives or pre-K program. So don't just I'm dead set on kindergarten, because that takes that pool of candidates, 200, and you'll probably be up in the high numbers if the only thing that you can teach is or uh, sometimes you don't get the number of students, and you may have to adjust. And I might say you're teaching kindergarten this year, and I hired you as a kindergarten teacher, but next year I need a third grade teacher. Are you willing? And if you're not willing, yeah. And so be flexible. That's all I'm saying. That's a good question. That's a good question. And I would love for you to ask me that question when you're a senior in college, because you will figure out real soon that you just want a job. And a good teacher is a good teacher. Now, we all have preferences, that we all have things we prefer. Um, but at the end of the day, accumulated some, after I accumulated some debt and some loans, and I just needed a job. When they called and said, my mind was set on third grade. Now, I would teach second, and I would teach fourth, but there's no way I'm teaching sixth grade math. Oh, when they called and offered the job, I said, I'll be there. What time do I need to be there? And so that whole piece of and throughout your teacher education program, they're not going to prepare you to be a fourth grade teacher. They're going to prepare you to be a teacher. So no matter where they place you, the instructional practices that they'll teach you, the tools that you'll get through a teacher education program, they'll teach you the spectrum. And so you'll get some exposure. Good programs are going to expose you to lower L and upper L. In the event that you should have to teach a kindergarten classroom and you're just diehard math, and usually in elementary, we don't departmentalize. Sometimes, but it's very minimal. So you will say a fifth grade teacher, you may say, I'm going to teach science and math, and the other teacher teaches ELA and social studies. But it's not like the secondary where you specialize in a particular content area. Yeah, right. But in most elementaries, you teach everything. You're the expert in all content areas, and so good question. And my answer is going to be the same. It's just remain flexible. Remain flexible. Because your competition is so stiff. And so you may prefer fifth grade, but if you get an interview, I will be the best kindergarten teacher because we can all learn. The internet is such a resource. Lesson plans are just abundantful. And so if you need a job, you'll figure it out. You'll figure it out. Thank you. I think I got about, did I miss anybody? I'm going to get you, and then I'm going to get you, and then we'll wrap it up. 1, 2, 3, and then we'll wrap it up. Common Core. What do you know about Common Core? That's a very good question. That's a and and the pros and cons. That's a very good question. Um, Let me start with I am a proponent of Common Core, and let me tell you why. For so many years, up until the even Common Core was proposed, every state had different curriculum, and different standards, and different assessments, and so but all states were ranked. And if you're in Massachusetts and I'm in Mississippi, we're not really comparing apples to apples because what your kids have to know in Massachusetts is different from what my kids have to know in Mississippi. Um, and so what Common Core does, it makes the fields even. Every kid has to learn the same standards. Let me tell you another proponent of Common Core versus Michigan grade level content expectations. That's what we currently did function under. You had to teach so much curriculum that kids we would call it, your curriculum was a mile wide and an inch deep. So because you had to teach so much, it was just so shallow that kids couldn't master anything because you had too much to teach. What Common Core has done, it has taken our curriculum standards and prioritized them, and let's just say that we are 3 feet wide, but a mile deeper. So we teach less, but we teach it deeper to a mastery. Does that make sense? Less curriculum, but we teach it so that kids truly have a good understanding and a mastery of the content. So, and the playing field is now level because what Massachusetts is teaching, Michigan is teaching, and California is teaching. You know what's also good about that? Because if our students aren't getting it in Michigan, but the students in California are yielding high results, Michigan needs to go have a conversation with California where we can then support each other. So there are a lot of proponents of Common Core. Does that answer your question? And I had one here and then here. No, that's a very good question. That's a very good question. And as a candidate, the first time you will see the students is the first time you're going to teach. And it works. It, it right, but again, those classroom management strategies that you'll learn in the teacher education program, the best practice strategies that you'll learn in a teacher education program. As a matter of fact, I've seen teachers come in never having seen the students, never having worked with the students, and do just as good, if not better job than a teacher who's been with them all year. So it's some interesting dynamics. And after you finish your teacher education program and you're equipped with those strategies, you will be fine. You'll be fine. And this is where I tell you to get as much capitalize on every opportunity that you have to work with kids, because my biggest reservation was uh, teachers getting before students and not being comfortable. You have all the knowledge, you have all the textbook knowledge, but you also need to couple that with experience, as much experience as possible. The more comfortable you are with kids, the more natural it'll feel. The more natural it'll feel, the more relaxed you'll be. The more relaxed you are, the more relaxed students are. But kids can sense your nervousness. They sense it. They sense everything. And so you really want to be very, very comfortable working with kids. Final question. Okay. Sure, sure. I can honestly tell you in the 6 years that I've been interviewing teacher candidates, without any reservation, I can say I have not looked at one transcript. I haven't looked at one transcript. However, the experience that you bring to the table is key. Now, here's the other piece about experience, because that's coupled with your references and your ability to get in the classroom to teach. And so you can have all A's and get in front of a group of students and flop. You can have all C's and get in front of a group of students and shine. That experience, coupled with your ability to build positive relationships, and let me throw in diversity too. Expose yourself to a broad, diverse student base. And diversity is just not ethnicity. It's class, it's religion, it's special ed versus general ed. The more diversity you can expose yourself to, and don't just think about ethnicity. Think about gifted students versus kids on grade level versus struggling students. That's diversity. Diversity is extremely broad, and the more you can expose yourself to, the better you will be equipped for classrooms in the 21st century, because you'll have kids in a third grade classroom, some showing up reading at 10th grade level. I have kids that read at a 10th grade level, and their classmates read at a first grade level. And as a classroom teacher, you have to be able to meet the needs of all students, and that is truly the challenge of teaching. Now, it's coupled. It doesn't work in your favor if you don't have classroom management, because already the most difficult part of teaching is meeting diverse needs of a classroom. And then if you got classroom management issues, it's like, oh my, it's going to be a struggle. So again, get those techniques down, learn them, continue being lifelong learners. Don't let that just be jargon. Learn, 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 be a sponge. Because the more tools you have and the more strategies you have, the better you'll be equipped for 21st century classrooms. Thank you for your time. This has been great. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bradshaw. We appreciate it. I'm so proud of my student. Yes, indeed. Anyway, yes, I just wanted to say that I was at King the other day, speaking of this broad-based experience. Part of what I do as teacher education supports coordinator is I place students particularly at Martin Luther King Leadership Academy. It is a school that is diverse across a lot of different areas. And Mr. Bradshaw's point about diversity being very broad, not just black and white, literally, is so true. But I was in this school the other morning, and a young man who obviously had been struggling for a long time to just write a simple sentence. I don't know if he was special education. I don't know what his background was, but his tutor brought him into the office, and she was so excited. And she said, talk to the secretary. I was standing there, a couple of other teachers, and she said, I want you to see this. And she showed this sentence that the student had written. And she said, I want you to read this to everybody. And he read that sentence, and apparently this was the first time that she had been able to get him to write a sentence, to read that sentence. I don't know the background of this situation, but he was just beaming, and she was so excited. I hugged the young man. So all I'm trying to say to you is that what we do as teachers reaches so deep and so broad. It is a very rewarding profession. We're glad to see you here. We're glad you're interested, but talk to us at any time because we can give you the real scoop. It's not just about going out for 3 months in the summer, because guess what? If you really want to be a good teacher, you're never off. You're never really on vacation. You're always looking to find a way to make your teaching better, to do that reflection and that refinement. So thank you so much for coming. You got your certificates. If you need anything, I'm Mrs. Redwine, 301 in the main building. I do the newsletter, I do the seminars, and I do place students in volunteer situations. So if you need some volunteer experience, please let me know. Thank you so much. Take care now.